Its high rate of fire came with drawbacks. The barrel overheated quickly, so fast that it had to be changed every 150 rounds of continuous fire. That's less than 10 seconds of non-stop shooting. German crews were trained to fire short bursts, but chaos on the battlefield didn't always allow that. So the MG42 had a brilliant quick-change barrel system. A latch on the receiver let the operator open the cover, pull out the hot barrel, and insert a fresh one in seconds. Teams carried 3 or 4 spares, and a trained crew could swap them in 5 seconds. Each squad usually had a horse or mule-drawn cart for ammo, since the MG42 could spit out hundreds of rounds in seconds, and some battles lasted hours or days. For context, a box of 2 150-round belts weighed about 10 kilograms, 22 pounds, and lasted only about 12 seconds of continuous fire. Speaking of ammo boxes, this is where German ingenuity shines again. They were waterproof, had specially designed shock-absorbing leather-wrapped handles placed so 2 boxes could be carried in one hand. One soldier could sprint out and bring back 4 boxes at once without smashing his shins. They could be stacked inside tanks, latched to belts for carrying, and even hooked directly to the Lafette tripod. And since we mentioned it, let's talk about the Lafette tripod. It was far from a simple stand. It was a brilliant, precision-engineered platform with recoil absorption, elevation and traverse controls, and even a preset firing zone mechanism. Mounted with either the MG42 or MG34, both worked equally well. It enabled extremely accurate fire at ranges up to 3,000 meters using its optics. This turned the machine gun into a heavy configuration, almost like a light artillery piece, raining bullets onto positions beyond direct sight. It was deadly against fortified positions or enemies in trenches. The Lafette also had something called a search-fire mechanism. This allowed the gun to automatically sweep the aim in preset horizontal and vertical arcs, essentially letting the gun walk across a target area. The crew could set range and spread, aim at a zone, and after firing, the gun would automatically cover that entire area. It even had a separate trigger connected to the gun so vibrations wouldn't disturb the aim. A crew could tie a rope to the trigger, preset the kill zone, and fire remotely from cover, perfect for ambush tactics. These systems frustrated Allied troops for good reason. The German gunner sat low to the ground, well protected, almost impossible to spot. He had an incredibly precise firing platform and didn't even need to be physically at the gun to fire it. These systems were so ahead of their time that the Allies had nothing even remotely comparable. And what's more, this precise tripod design is still used today, 80 years later, often paired with the same machine gun with minor changes. Naturally, Allied soldiers weren't indifferent to the MG42, especially after seeing what it could do. Hence the colorful nicknames. It got so bad that American propaganda films were made specifically to convince troops that their weapons were superior and to downplay the MG42's effectiveness. They tried reassuring terrified recruits that it barks more than it bites. But you couldn't sell that to anyone who had been on the receiving end of an MG42. To make matters worse for the Allies, the Germans perfected tactical use of their machine guns. They dug multiple alternate firing positions. They fired from one camouflaged spot, then quickly moved to another and continued firing from a different angle. This created the illusion of far more guns than there really were. Allied soldiers often said the Germans were masters at making one man seem like an entire squad. As for combat effectiveness, Allied soldiers openly admitted it was likely the best machine gun in the world at the time. American infantry had to change tactics just to deal with it, coordinating movement with mortars and artillery to suppress machine gun nests before attempting to advance under smoke. A well-placed MG42 could delay an entire battalion. Nowhere was this more terrifying than on Omaha Beach. In the first waves, American troops came under deadly crossfire. Heinrich Severloh, a German machine gunner who survived the landings, later claimed he fired over 12,000 rounds that day and cut down more than 1,000 American soldiers. This figure is likely exaggerated, but the weapon's terrifying effectiveness is not. So why didn't the Allies just copy the MG42 if it was so good? They tried. American engineers obtained captured MG42s and attempted reverse engineering, but they never succeeded. They couldn't reach the same rate of fire, and their prototypes were too unreliable, so the project was scrapped. But the MG42's design didn't vanish. It shaped future machine gun designs. The famous American M60, for example, was basically a mix of parts from the German FG42 and MG42. And here's the twist, in the early 1950s, West Germany was rearming under NATO and needed a general-purpose machine gun again. Of all available designs, including brand-new American and British ones, the most effective option was what they already knew well. They took the wartime MG42, changed the caliber to NATO standard 7.62 by 51 mm, modified the feed mechanism and barrel slightly, and named it the MG3. And yes, it is still in service today. That's over 80 years of continuous service. Yugoslavia's M53, for example, was an almost exact copy of the wartime MG42 and remained in service into the 1990s. The modern MG3 fires a little slower, around 1,000 rounds per minute. The rate of fire can also be changed by swapping bolts of different weights. But the fact that this thing is still in service, still reliable, and still deadly after all these years says more than any nickname ever could. Instead of telling you the countless, already over-repeated stories about the MG42, we're going to do something different. We'll show you just how terrifyingly far German ingenuity went in designing the ideal machine for death. Keep in mind, this was over 80 years ago. And essentially the same weapon is still in service today. Nothing better has been invented to replace it. But the weapon itself wasn't the only thing that was frighteningly ingenious. Every small detail surrounding it was carefully designed to unlock its full potential. And today, we'll show you exactly that. So let's start from the very beginning. How and why did the MG42 come into existence at all? When World War II began, most armies were still using concepts and equipment born from the trench warfare of the previous conflict. In World War I, most nations relied on water-cooled Maxim machine guns, which for the first time gave them an extremely effective way to defend fixed positions. The trench warfare that followed happened in part because of that. These machine guns were effective, no doubt, but they were heavy and completely unsuitable for mobile warfare. But the battlefield was changing. As Germany prepared for a new war in the 1930s, its military theorists realized that speed and maneuverability would be the key to modern combat. That's when they developed the tactic that became known as blitzkrieg. Dragging along a 60-kilogram Maxim machine gun simply did not fit this picture. Germany needed a new machine gun, one that could perform multiple roles at once. Something that could be carried, mounted, or fortified. And in 1934, after many failures and tests, they built the world's first true general-purpose machine gun, the MG34. It fired a powerful 7.92 mm round at about 900 rounds per minute. What made it revolutionary was its light weight, air cooling, belt feed, and a quick-change barrel system that actually worked. It could be used for virtually any role imaginable: infantry assault, defense in light and heavy configurations with the Lafette mount, which, by the way, was itself a brilliant device that we'll explain in a moment. It could also be mounted on tanks, vehicles, even aircraft, and used as light anti-aircraft weaponry. In versatility and quality, nothing else in the world came close. Now, you're probably wondering why they made a new machine gun if this one was so good. Well, of course, there were problems. The MG34 was too refined. Every component was precisely milled from solid steel, a process requiring time, skilled labor, and expensive machinery. And when the war of attrition fully unfolded, meaning production and maintainability became the priority, this became a major issue. It also did poorly in dirt and extreme temperatures, especially in places like Africa and Soviet Russia, due to its tight engineering tolerances. Germany needed something that remained deadly effective but was cheaper, simpler, and faster to mass-produce to meet the demands of war. So, in early 1942, a prototype appeared that ignored almost every traditional rule of weapon design. Instead of precision-milled parts, it used stamped steel, drastically reducing manufacturing time and cost. One MG42 required about 150 man-hours to produce. The MG42 cut this in half. It was also more tolerant of harsh conditions and simpler to operate. After successful testing and minor adjustments, it entered mass production. In just 3 short years, more than 400,000 units were built. Although the new model was clearly the future, the MG42 didn't disappear. It remained on the front lines and in production until the end of the war because it still had advantages. It was better suited for tanks due to its barrel change system. What made it revolutionary was its light weight, air cooling, belt feed, and a quick-change barrel system that actually worked. It could be used for virtually any role imaginable: infantry assault, defense in light and heavy configurations with the Lafette mount, which, by the way, was itself a brilliant device that we'll explain in a moment. It could also be mounted on tanks, vehicles, even aircraft, and used as light anti-aircraft weaponry. In versatility and quality, nothing else in the world came close. Now, you're probably wondering why they made a new machine gun if this one was so good. Well, of course, there were problems. The MG42 was too refined. Every component was precisely milled from solid steel, a process requiring time, skilled labor, and expensive machinery. And when the war of attrition fully unfolded, meaning production and maintainability became the priority, this became a major issue. It also did poorly in dirt and extreme temperatures, especially in places like Africa and Soviet Russia, due to its tight engineering tolerances. Germany needed something that remained deadly effective but was cheaper, simpler, and faster to mass-produce to meet the demands of war. So, in early 1942, a prototype appeared that ignored almost every traditional rule of weapon design. Instead of precision-milled parts, it used stamped steel, drastically reducing manufacturing time and cost. One MG42 required about 150 man-hours to produce. The MG42 cut this in half. It was also more tolerant of harsh conditions and simpler to operate. After successful testing and minor adjustments, it entered mass production. In just 3 short years, more than 400,000 units were built. Although the new model was clearly the future, the MG42 didn't disappear. It remained on the front lines and in production until the end of the war because it still had advantages. It was better suited for tanks due to its barrel change system. The stock could be removed to save space, and the barrel was swapped by unlocking and rotating the receiver, allowing the hot barrel to be pulled straight out the back. The MG42 used a faster side unlocking system, but that wasn't practical inside cramped tank turrets. And since German factories were constantly under pressure, they couldn't afford to stop production of either model. Both remained throughout the war, though focus shifted to the MG42. The MG42 wasn't terrifyingly effective only because of its extremely high rate of fire, 1,200 rounds per minute, over twice that of Allied machine guns. While that's true and part of the reason, the real story was how German squads were organized to extract the absolute maximum from that firepower. And when you combine that with stubborn commanders who drove their men across open fields into positions defended by such weapons, well, let's just say the fields turned red, literally. Unlike American or British units, where machine guns supported riflemen, German squads were built the opposite way. The entire squad existed to protect, supply, and operate the machine gun team, which was their primary source of firepower. The standard infantry squad had 10 men, and at its center was the machine gun crew, the gunner, assistant gunner, and ammunition carrier. Others included the squad leader with an MP40 and riflemen armed with Kar 98 bolt-action rifles. Each had a specific role to ensure flawless operation. The assistant handled gun operation, barrel swaps, reloading, and was trained to immediately take over if, more like when, the gunner was hit. In defense, the MG42 was placed in carefully chosen firing positions, often with overlapping fields of fire with other machine guns.